Joining us now, Alden Gonzalez covers Major League Baseball for ESPN. Recently wrote a piece about the Houston Astros starting rotation, specifically the international signings that they have in that rotation: Fromber, Valdez, Christian Javier, Luis Garcia, Jose Urquidy. Alden, thanks for taking a few minutes hanging out with us on this Friday afternoon. Whenever you wrote that piece, what were some of the most interesting things you learned about this young core for the Astros in this starting rotation?
Honestly, guys, it's just each of their individual stories and each of their developments is phenomenal. I think I wrote that in the story that they're basically four miracles, because when you consider players like Urquidy and Valdez and Garcia, those are guys that are undervalued in the international market. Those are guys that are never really given a chance. And anytime you can develop players like that, I mean, when you consider that every year there are about 400 guys who sign for five-figure bonuses, which is what the four of those guys except Urquidy got, for them to all matriculate to the major leagues and not just get there, but stay there, prove that they are consistent, effective major league starting pitchers, all four of those cases are just, you don't see that. You don't ever see that. And, how they found them, how they got the most out of them, every single one of those stories is unique, and every single one of those stories, I think, was special.
I think it's unique, too, in the fact that when you talk about it, Alden, you think about it, every team could have one of those guys. The fact that they all were discovered, they're all together, and now the great thing is you see the camaraderie, the togetherness, and how great not only the stories are, but the people behind the stories in each of those situations, and realize how much fun they're having. And then you think about how they got Altuve the same way and how they discovered him. And it just adds to what a great story it is.
Absolutely. I mean, I honestly think, guys, that it's the story of the Astros. It's the story of the Astros in every bit as much as it is Alex Bregman and trading for Justin Verlander and just the core of star players that they built. And the reason why that story just sort of grabbed at me was because we see this all the time with teams that emerge as these sort of juggernaut teams like the Astros did, right? We saw it with the Cubs. The Cubs emerged in 2016, and the narrative around them was, this is the beginning of a dynasty in Chicago. And it never materialized. The reason why that never materialized was because they were never able to develop pitching. And what happens when you get a team that ascends, the natural progression of this is that those young players that you drafted high or that you spent a lot on internationally, they get more expensive. And then when those players get more expensive, and then when you catapult that by drafting later in the first round because you're finishing the prior seasons with better records, it's so hard to just sort of maintain that sustainability. You need guys who develop on the other end of the payroll, who are cheaper, but who are very good. And I honestly don't think that the Astros are where they are right now. I mean, some people might disagree with that, but if they're not getting effective production from guys who are cheaper, like Urquidy, like Javier, like Garcia, like Valdez, I don't think they have the sustainability that we're talking about here, where you're looking at this year, they have a good chance of getting to the ALCS for a sixth time. And, you look next year and the year after that, you see just sort of the nucleus of a team that's going to continue to be in contention.
That's something that's talked about a lot here, Alden. And I think that you're right in line saying that this four that you're talking about, all minor miracles to be where they are, I mean, they're very critical to the success of what is one of the best pitching rotations in all of baseball. And, one of the topics of conversation in this city is, is the Astros window closing with Cole gone, Springer gone, Correa gone? But you see, kind of a new nucleus with Jordan, Tucker, but then namely the starting pitchers that you mentioned as well.
Hey, guys, back to the video in just 1 minute. Before that, I want to tell you about Fitz Roofing. Fitz Roofing is dedicated to the loyal people of Houston, Texas. That means if you got a leaky roof or need a full roof replacement on your business or your home, or you want to get something done around the yard or maybe something around the house, they have the best warranties in the business, the best ratings, and the best service. They're going to take care of you every step of the way. Fitz Roofing, making a difference, one home at a time.
And one of the things that I wanted to ask you is, because you mentioned this in the article, that the Astros went out and got these guys whenever they were older, and a lot of teams were ignoring them because of their age. And the Astros mantra was, look, we don't care how old they are. We just care if they're good. Have you seen a change around Major League Baseball where they're going after some of the older international free agents because of the Houston Astros?
Not necessarily, and I think Oslo Campbell, who ran their international department at that time and has come back as a cross-checker, he touched on this, where, yes, a lot of teams are signing older players at cheaper rates, but not because they think that they could extract much value out of them. What's going on right now internationally is a lot of teams have invested a lot of resources, especially in the Dominican Republic. And so a lot of teams in the Dominican Republic now, they field two teams out of the Dominican Academy. I mean, 10 years ago, a lot of teams didn't have any teams in the Dominican Republic. Now they're fielding two teams. And so what you need to fill out those rosters. So, yes, a lot of teams go out and they sign pitching to $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, but they do it mostly to just fill out their affiliates. They don't really do it because they think they're going to build starting pitchers out of these guys. And I think what separates the Astros is they treat the guy that they signed for $20,000, $10,000, like Javier, like Valdez. They treat him like their seven-figure bonus baby. They put just as much resources into those pitchers as they do with everybody else, whereas in other organizations, that's not really the priority. I think that's the separator. I think they care. When Oslo Campbell got there in 2012, he told me this recently, that their goal was to be number one or number two in the Dominican Republic, in Venezuela, and in Cuba, right? Like the three places where most of the Latin American talent comes from. And in order to do that, they need to not only invest resources there, but learn about the cultures there and have boots on the ground there, and just sort of be in touch with those communities. And I think that care is shown in some of that sort of camaraderie that you talked about with those four pitchers coming up through the system, coming up together. You know, one thing that I wish I could have done in the article, but is actually impossible, is just to sort of credit all the different people who are instrumental in the development of guys like this. I mean, it goes way beyond even the people that I mentioned in that story, because so many people just sort of have to have their hands on these guys in order to make that happen. So I guess it's just a longer way of answering your question. Yes, a lot of teams are signing these guys. I don't think teams are placing as much importance on them, though, as the Astros did previously.
And I think the Astros continue to get credit for that, Alden, because I think the other story that fits all of this narrative is the fact that when they went calling on the Dodgers for Yordan Alvarez, the Dodgers actually thought they were referring to another prospect that they were worried about losing. And then when they found out it was Yordan Alvarez, just basically said, oh, yeah, sure, go take him. Now you look and fast forward it and see not only how it's turned out, but how both sides came together on a deal that's going to be so friendly for the Astros going forward. And it sends that message about, hey, guess who cares about the players in the Dominican? Guess who cares about the international player? And guess who scouts them better than anybody else? The Houston Astros.
And that's a big separator. I mean, how often do you see the Dodgers look bad on a trade like that? Mm-hmm. I mean, that's the one that everybody points to. And you guys probably know this already, but the Astros identified Yordan Alvarez. They liked him. They were huge fans of him from the onset, and it's why they wanted to trade for him, and it's why they were willing to give up a first-round pick like they did for Yordan Alvarez, because they liked him so much. And that's it doesn't get talked about as much, and rightfully so, right? Because Alex Bregman developed into such a star. Kyle Tucker, we're seeing it now. Carlos Correa, George Springer, Jose Altuve. But, you know, I covered the Angels for a long time, and they are a living embodiment of how you need more than just even a couple of guys, a couple of superstars to consistently win. And the one thing that they couldn't do is develop pitching, and what the Astros have done, and the reason why they're here, is because they developed those four guys.
Alden, I think it's one of the conversations that's going on right now around Major League Baseball, namely because Juan Soto. I mean, teams are talking. There's reports of certain packages from certain teams, what the cost would be for a Juan Soto, and then you look at the Angels, who have arguably the two best players in baseball with Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani, and it's like, what does it take to win in Major League Baseball? Is it top-heavy, names at the top, or is it just one complete team? What do you think's the right recipe?
Development. You have to be able to develop if you want to win. You can't buy your way into a World Series, I don't think. Maybe you can buy your way into one, but you better have the development if you want to sustain it. I think the Nationals, Juan Soto's team, is a perfect example. They had sort of, when they won in 2019, I didn't think that they were the best team in that playoff field by a lot. But they were very top-heavy. They had that great rotation. They had Soto and Anthony Rendon, and so they were able to win some short series and win it all. I'm not trying to take anything away from them, but if you want sustainability, you better be able to develop guys in your system. I think the Dodgers do it just as well as anybody, to be honest. I mean, I think they still have the lowest ERA in baseball, and if you look at their pitching staff and the amount of injuries that they've had, it's incredible. But they're able to develop guys, and they're able to just sort of find ways to win games, regardless of who's out there on the mound for them. But there's no question that you need to be able to develop. You need to be able to have guys who are controllable, who are giving you value. Because once you go into the free agent market to try to fill holes, which ends up happening to a lot of teams when their farm system dries up, it's just a very dangerous proposition because you're signing guys now at high dollar amounts when they're either at the end of their prime or nearing the end of their prime. And then that's when sort of things start to speed up on you, and that's when teams have to start to rebuild. If you don't have that constant pipeline of development, you're not going to be able to achieve sustainability.
Alden, we appreciate you taking a few minutes, hanging out with us. Great job on the article. Continue the great work, and we'll catch up again soon, hopefully.
Great. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
You got it. It's Alden Gonzalez, who covers Major League Baseball for ESPN. Fascinating insight. If you haven't taken a look at that, make sure you find it with the Astros 4 starters.
And I think back to like when the Astros got Yuli, and then we're trying to get Lourdes Gurriel. Mm-hmm. But when you think about that and you say, especially when you've lost picks because of all the things that you've been through, you have to create other opportunities for resources in a pipeline. You got to believe that most of the kids growing up in the Dominican that are playing ball right now or down in Mexico are thinking to themselves, hey, man, if I have my choice and my druthers, I want to be in that system with those guys because they not only know how to find the talent, but they know how to develop and give us the best chance to play.
I think it's why the Astros have been one of the best organizations in baseball, is the pipeline, is that player development.